A budget gaming system isn't really easy. There's lots of videos on YouTube and information across the net that says buy an old Dell, put a new power supply in it, buy a new connector, buy a new hard drive, buy a new graphics card, and you will have a budget gaming system. I've just spent the last 3 days, looking at alternatives, old HP systems. Now, old HP systems are exactly the same as Dell, except sometimes there's a lot more interesting parts in a HP system, and they're built exactly really much the same as a Dell system in specification or requirements, but their hardware specifications are completely different. In a HP system, you'll have a standard ATX power supply with a 24 pin, opposed to a Dell system with an 8 pin, which requires a conversion. So you're not always better off on the Dell option, because you don't have to replace the power supply, which can save you between £30 and £80 in your budget build. Now, the power supply consumption across all the boards as you get newer tech, becomes lower down, so you don't need high wattage power supplies. What I did was actually look through and see what the power draw was. On our HP system, we had a power draw of about 150 watts after the upgrade. So a 300 watt power supply is going to be ample to run that system, and you won't have any problems at all. Back in the day, which was probably about 20 years ago, there was a big issue with power supplies, whether they could give the power to the processor, motherboards and graphics cards. The graphics card were the biggest issue and problem with those systems, and in terms of gaming, this is going to be your problem as well. However, the graphics card power draw and a lot of mid-range, mid to up range or mid to low range are without the requirement of a secondary connection to power the graphics card. Therefore, all the power comes from the motherboard. The motherboard manufacturers or the system manufacturers will give you a power output through the PCI Express card. Therefore, you should be able to gain some information from that. However, if you go through and connect from the power supply, then it's just down to the power supply rather than the PCI Express and the limitations of the motherboard. So with that out of the way, what I've done is I've gone through what I would consider a proper budget system, and a budget system I'm going to change over to a value system, and a value system is one that will play games and do other things and won't cost you as much as you may think. As you see from the holder for this video, we are looking at about 170 British pounds. I did one 167 pounds and about £230, so we get round about the £200 mark either way, plus or minus £50. On the other system, I actually did that total with an SSD, and you'll find out why in this video. So I hope this is informative or somewhere near helpful. It may not be, it may make no sense at all, or it may be quite insightful. It's up to you and how you take it. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. If this video is rubbish, put it a thumb down. If it's any good, put it up. If I can improve the video, please just make a comment like, I wish you showed more of the benchmarking, I wished you showed the build process, but I'm just literally trying to do. Okay, we've heard a lot about the Dell gaming systems for budgeting, so I thought I would have a look at what HP had to offer. So what we're going to do quickly in this video is have a look at a HP system, see how that compares and what we can do with that. So I've got a, let me read it again, a DC 5800. That comes with a dual core 2 Duo processor from Intel, and I'm just looking it up on my desktop, and it has no hyper-threading technology, has no turbo boost, it is 64-bit, it has a power DTP of 65 watts. So at 65 watts we can work out our power consumptions, but before we even get anywhere near that, it is a 775 board, so it's a dead socket, so these can be picked up for near pennies. This one came as part of a bulk buy, but roughly we're looking at about a £35 price tag. What we've done to team this up as a gaming system is there is a 9600 PCI Express graphics card in there, and we'll be running through one of my old system builds from GT Ultima Systems, which is roughly the same era system, and I found them to be about 25% under par, which brings it down to probably about 50%, and that uses a quad core hyper threaded processor. So we'll be looking at the old tech quad cores and hyper threading versus the desktop dual core non-hyper threading systems, and actually looking at how that actually performs in the games. So we're going to be testing some relatively basic games, Fortnite, World of Tanks I think I have, and we'll have a look at if they are playable. I'm not going to go through frame rates in this video. There's little point in considering frame rates. It's just a matter of, can you have relatively high settings and is it playable? I think that's the actual benchmark that everyone considers, because the video that you're watching, if it's in perfectly fluid, is only 29 frames. So what we're going to do is quickly have a look at the system. I've done some B-roll just so we can go through it, but what we have is the processor, which is ducted, and the case is ducted. We have 4 SATA ports, we have 4 memory slots, we have a standardized power supply which goes all the way through the HP one, so unless the power supply is underpowered, there's no need to go out and buy a new power supply or a used power supply. It really doesn't make any difference, but you don't have to buy your 24 to 8 pin converter, so you're saving some pennies there too in respect of what it will perform like. But what we'll do is we'll go through and actually see if it holds any gaming performance at all, and whether the 60 to 80 pounds that you may spend on this computer upgraded would be really worth it. So we're going to go and look at the chipset as well. It has a 3-phase, exactly ugly. I'm just looking at it outside here. It's relatively modern designed. It's got good airflow, although it does take dust, and there is still, when I got it, it was quite dusty inside, so you are going to have to probably take one apart, get out your paintbrush, which I use, and a air can, and just blow through all the dust and clean it all off, so that you're not getting an overheating issue, which I would expect will be one of the main reasons why people will get rid of these computers, because they will overheat and be shuts off for no apparent reason. So as you can see, we're just booting up, and I didn't wait until I'd done the speed test, but we have a read of 52 and a write of 50, and that's on a standard SATA. As you can see, it was at the boot time, so I'm just going to rerun that test and see if we get any better performance. It is the E. Okay, I'm going to run this. This is the R15 Cinebench. No, I didn't pitch touch that one. Oh wow, this is going to be fun. Otherwise people will complain that this time they're not going to get back from their lives. So interestingly, I've just pulled up this, and as you can see, no, it's got up to 93% now, but it's actually not maxing out the processor. That might be down to thermal throttling or something like that, but it's running at 2.7 rather than 2.9 gigs. So that's relatively interesting. I only just thought it looked a little bit too slow than what it should have been. So, not long now. There was probably a minute or so pause there. If you've run this on loads of systems or seen it, you'll know there's always a couple of small points and obviously a little bit faster, and then we get another few slows over there. As I said. Okay, so we got a score, a whopping 149. I've run these tests before, and you kind of do get a variation of 10 or so points. So we're so 240 is 105. So we're not half the speed of an i5 3317U. A 486 is the i5 2500, which is a suitable card and gaming experience. So I'm just going to click on here to run the GL score, and we'll see how it fares on there. So I've just clocked up the graphics card ever so slightly. I think that would be considered risky. I don't know how well this would actually come across on there, because sometimes you get, oh, look at the, that's not smooth, is it, really? So our frame speed, it might not be because it's not native though, because this is a 1224 by 2048 or something like that. So our actual screen resolution is a bit of an oddity, so that would actually probably burden the system a bit more. This isn't too bad, it's relatively fluid. I can see frame drops on the frame rates are relatively low. I'm sure if I look at the camera screen to see if that actually comes across in the camera screen. So we got a 21.6 frames per second. Great. Okay, so we've got 20 frames on this benchmark. We have a processing performance, so what are we? We have a GT 650 and the GT 620. Scores less, the 50. Actually, to be honest, looking at the score here, this is a 4-core 8-thread 2.6 processor with an NVIDIA 650. Scores of 52 frames per second, which is actually pretty good. So we're looking here, and the frame score on here is 21 and 6. So it could be that our graphics card is a little bit old. Significantly old, and what I might have to do is actually change over the graphics card and benchmark this again. Okay, so you're joining us in the next graphics card. As you can see, it's a huge amount smoother, and I just hope that that's coming across in the video. So as you can see, what I've done is put in another GPU. This time it's the GTX 750 1GB card, and these are available for around the £40 to £50 mark. And I looked at the prices for the HP, they're around about the £35 to £60 mark. So our score there is 41.06 frames per second, which actually puts us under the GT650. So what I'm going to do is quickly have a look at the specs on that, and we'll talk about why there's a difference between the GT650 and the GTX 750, and that just doesn't seem right. The memory clock is 5 gigs per second. It has 512 CUDA cores and a base clock of 1020 megahertz and a boost clock of 1085. There we go. Right, has 384 cores and about the same in memory bandwidth. So 80 gigs per second, 80 gigs per second. So there's not really much difference in the difference between them, apart from obviously the 750 having more CUDA cores. I'm going to open the so you want something around about the 1080. Let's push it all the way up there. That's probably a bit too much. Plus It's plus 89, 60, click that, and I'm going to quickly run that again, and if it doesn't crash we should be good. So we'll catch up with this at the end. Okay, so we were just running the benchmark there, and as you can see on MSI Burner we're getting a really low clock speed, so that's obviously causing an issue. So that'll be a driver fault. So what we'll do is we'll find some new drivers for it and run them through it again and see what we get. Okay, so what we've done now is we've put in a Q6600. It's not the top of the line, but it's a fairly cheap chip because all of the generation chips, the fastest ones, are the most expensive and have a premium. But the 9700 would be the top range here. So this is a little bit below. But as you can see, it's a 4-core, and we're catching up on the end of the Cinebench R15. So we'll just let this run through, and then we'll get to the end of it and see the results. Okay, so we have a result of 237. Now this will be down to the hard drive and the memory, which really does perform quite poorly on here. But as you can see, we're almost up 100 points on our system before, on our hardware, which was a dual core. Obviously the difference being though is that this processor is a 2.4 gigahertz processor and the previous processor was near a 3 gigahertz. So well, after the BIOS update, the drivers for the GPU, we were hitting around the 43 to 46 mark, depending on whether the clock speed held. Although I did find that the clock speed on there was underclocking. So the problem is that the graphics card performance is just okay, and the processor performance is now doubled. Before the upgrade, we were getting a significantly bottom end, don't even bother computer system. Now, don't bother computer systems are those who fall in the lower 25% of computer systems. So I'm going to run the other benchmark now and see what performance we got, because obviously the graphics card on here was not the actual bottom end. We were just slightly under the world average computer system. So it's not that bad being just about average, because just about average will just about do. So let's crack on and have a look at the changes in our benchmark. So this is the on-call ray tracing benchmark for World of Tanks, and as you can see the frame rate is pretty much smooth. Not really seeing any problems. But then again, I already know that this type of setup will actually work and run World of Tanks. But our graphics performance is pretty smooth. Yeah, it would be. Never had any problem. This is on medium settings. That's not helpful in it's not displaying any of the frames per second anywhere. Only the time lapse up in the top corner to when this benchmark will end. Although the graphics performance in the I'm spraying sand isn't fantastic, nor was that. I'm sure I've seen better performance and better graphics. Of course, these are trying to show off much more modern graphics and rendering. You can see it does a fair good job, really. And there's no big slowdowns. The graphics are relatively basic. It's to feature certain features which this graphic card doesn't even actually have. So that's quite interesting in a way. Okay, we're coming out to 8 seconds now, so we should soon get our result. But I can't see any problems there in playing. I knew there would never be any problems. This hard drive, they're using a mechanical hard drive, is horrendous. Okay, so our performance rating was 15,715. Not quite sure what that means because there's absolutely no benchmark for it. Our resolution is excessive, so apparently that was a great result. Okay, so this is on my system. It's not ideally showing you, but that's a little bit. That's helpful. So my bottom of my screen's here. This is on a 1620 by 1080. Just missed out on that. The graphics are completely different. You see more grind. Flowers are completely different. The edging of the flowers is completely different. The rocks rendering, the whole complete picture is completely different. So as you're seeing in the background here, as opposed to the background here, you see how the trees look completely different. So we've ran considerable benchmarks across both of the systems. I've used my system as a good bench because I know that it plays lots of different games without any issues. The HP system run with probably a region of 10 to 20 frames different on the benchmarks when I actually managed to get them for apples and apples. Now the issue is will you actually notice any difference whilst gaming? And as you've probably seen from the video footage of the benchmarks as they ran, there was no discernible difference because the frame rate hadn't dropped down so far as to cause any issues. So the point is that most graphics cards will perform at a certain degree. We both think 750 is going to be a little bit slower. It's not going to be hugely slow as to be a noticeable problem on most games, although in ultra and ultra high settings you are going to get a drawback, especially on multiplayers. The ideal one probably would be going for something like the 1960 graphics card, which is 4 GB and is going to give you 20 plus frames per second more. So therefore that margin that you have in those extra frames are the margins of performance and graphics. So when we put the 1660 into the HP system, PC Mark gave some unreliable results and really mixed results. In fact, when it went in there, most of the system actually had lower marks on it. And what I did notice was penalising up to 75% of the PC mark, of the pass mark or whatever it's called, was being penalised on the system. So obviously that really is a big issue if you have a penalisation for absolutely no good reason. Now the reason for it is that I was running in 1080 720 resolution, and it wanted to run certain aspects of it as the 1224, which is probably about 25% more than graphics performance requirements than the lower resolution, or the widescreen resolution, lower widescreen resolution. So your 1650 1080 resolution, which I benchmarked in, it came out okay. There was some lows, but the main actual issue in there was the fact that I'm using a mechanical hard drive. At times when the drive was clucking away, slurping, boiling, cooking away, the frame rates were noticeably dropping, and there was some stutters from that, but otherwise when it had cached into the RAM there was no other issues. Okay, so another issue with the HP system is that the BIOS and all the firmware are out of date. So I've done some of the updates in there, and I'm going to go back through and run the benchmarks, and then when I edit that finally, the video will get a decent mark also from the actual results. And oddly enough, it says that I stopped myself installing some software which I used to benchmark and test, so I wanted to verify other tests that were done and the results. So so that magical number of 60 is obviously somewhat a good benchmark, to be honest, because if my mechanical knowledge and engineering knowledge is correct, if you have 144 Hertz, and that's frames per second on a monitor, if you've got a 60 frames per second graphics card, you may notice slight difference, although technically your eye sees between 30 and 60 frames, although you won't actually notice any stutter, and I think it's 24 frames. HD videos, such as the videos that I do, are 29, I think 29 frames per second, and you wouldn't notice any jumping about in them, although I'm not exactly hyperactive and running around all over the place. So okay, so here we are at part 2. Okay, so there's some B-roll rolling across the screen. It should be across it now. Now this is a GT Ultima system that is actually built on a Xenon processor platform. The H55GB board is a 5-ounce copper board, and it's still dead socket. It's still socket 775. So as you can see, this competent board and competent system is mixed up with a number of nice features, such as plenty of USB ports, a Corsair, a power supply, which is very good. It's not modular, but pretty good. There's 5 SATA ports, 2 PCI Express, and 2 PCI ports. However, if you use your first port, you lose your first PCI slot, because it's impossible to put anything else underneath the cooler. There's 8 gigs of DDR RAM, a PAN3 of IDE connections, and on the back we have HDMI, DVI, DisplayPort, and more on there. However, for that option on this board, you would end up having to have a different processor than the one that's on there. So what we did is we ran through and we tested the HP system, and we found that it was wanting. And by wanting, I mean that it was okay, but not that okay, to be honest. The bottlenecks, which I'll probably do in part 3, is explain all the bottlenecks in the system and what were the problems were being caused by the hardware involved. Now, a BIOS software issue is probably one thing that I will mention now, and that the speed of the RAM was not brilliant at all, and thus it was a little bit slow RAM wise, and it probably could have done with another 4 gigs. However, we don't have that problem with this system. We have the full 8 gigs in here. We're going to use the same graphics card and the same hard drive. Now, the hard drive actually was a problem on the HP system, but let's see if that's still going to be the problem across on the other one. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is do a load of the preliminaries, and we get into about a 30 to 50% unequally performance of the system. Now this is just a quick intro fill-in bit, because the problem or the bottleneck is the hard drive. Now I'm trying to do benchmark tests, etc, or loading gains and everything else like that, but 100% constantly is the hard drive. Graphics performance is much better, but we're still getting a really choked up problem with the hard drive. Now, so gaming systems have always been pretty much a serious matter. The performance and bottleneck consolidation has to be done correctly, with operating systems acting on hardware which doesn't cause any slowdowns. In these both budget systems, we found the major flaw was with the hard drive systems on them being so slow that it was bottlenecking both the CPU's graphics and their benchmark results. In the second system, what we did is we put in a second hard drive correctly. Windows automatically performance boosted or custom boosted the system to change the page file from one drive to the other drive. This is what was running constantly, and the ACHI mode wasn't exactly optimal for the drives that were installed. So overall we got high and ultra settings in Fortnite and played them at over 120 frames per second on the same graphics card that we used in the other system. The second Xenon system actually runs on DDR3 at 133 MHz, therefore it's no real slouch, although I believe the other computer system ran at 800 MHz, which was kind of really a disablement for it. It wasn't disabled in that it wouldn't play games, it was disabled more because of the hard drive more than anything else. So really the issue with it is of course the hard drive system. So what would be my recommendation and what can we take away? The 9600 graphics card performed relatively miserable in all the benchmarks. In fact, I didn't even bother putting it into the Xeon system to see if it actually made any difference at all. Although there was at least 1,000 points change from going from one system to the other, just on the GPU marks. So obviously the motherboard, the chipset and perhaps the PCI Express was slightly different. The systems date roughly 4 years apart in manufacturing technology, which is quite the jump. We don't expect any PC to last more than 4 years. Okay, so now we're into day 3. Unfortunately I was a bit tired last night to actually finish off doing the review and information of my findings. So what we had was a HP system, a 775 socket, and we put a quad core Q6600 at 2.4 gigs in there. There was no overclocking options available, so we really didn't get much performance from it. What we did then is take one of my GT Ultima servers, which was made over 10 years ago, and we ran exactly the same drives and the same graphics card in there, and we had a almost like for like 2.4 gigahertz Intel Xeon processor. The results came back in. Performance of the graphics card was up 1,000 points. The processor was about a couple of 100 points more, and overall there was about a 30 to 40 point performance increase across the system, bringing it up to the 47 to 66 percentile of all global computer performance results. The difference between the two, I believe the HP is a 2006 system and the system I built was a 2010 system, which is really common practice and the norm in computer upgrades and performance, because what happens is that a computer system every 4 years will generally have an increase and a performance jump. Normally, and what I do is I have a computer system and they always are in the top 25%, which is the high grade computer and the enthusiast computer region. The bottom of the 25% is your standard top of the range systems, and your top of that top 25% are your overclocked, super cooled, glorified computer systems. So once you're in that top end, your computer system is exactly what you would class as fast. The middle section has such a wide range of computers. They will go from your stock systems, all less than 4 years, to slightly antiquated systems which are not particularly brilliant, and then the bottom 25% are either old systems or just rubbish. So what we found with the HP system was that it fell within the 25%, so technically I would totally disregard it. Now the system actually had problems and fell in that 25%, mostly because of the hard drive. It wasn't that it wouldn't play games relatively well, it was just that the hard drive was so slow and so full up with modern computerization, as a word, software and how things have developed, that it really choked up the drive on there, and we had huge problems. That was exactly the same issue that started with the Xeon system as well. Now, to get around that problem, I didn't bother with an SSD drive. What I did was put another SATA drive in there, and Microsoft swapped the page file from the one drive over to the other drive. So we got a huge, massive performance increase because we weren't subject to hardware lagging and bandwidth problems which were really slowing the systems down. I didn't go back and do it in the HP because, to be honest, the HP system is DDR2, the other system is DDR3, and I wouldn't recommend going back that old, and the price of computing is a lot lower, so you can buy an i3 and i5 modern system, not the old systems, for £40 to £60. So I'll assume that people will be willing to pay £50 for an old computer and £50 for a graphics card and £55 for an SSD, and that will bring you up into well into the top 65 to 75, 80 percentile of computers, so your gaming experience will be fine and dandy. So what did we learn? Well, the latest and greatest graphics card doesn't give you the latest and greatest computer experience, and it is not that the older system hardware will deny you that. When I first put the Xeon system together and ran Fortnite, it came up and performed very much similar to what I would expect of a Xbox One S. They're a little bit old now, but it's still a gaming platform and still a usable system, and obviously the frame rates were up to 136 at times, but hovered around about the 120 range, whilst I changed the frame caps from 60, which is a default, over to 144. So we didn't quite make the 144, although I did think I did see it a few times on there. So 144 frames from a 750 GTX graphics card in Fortnite is well acceptable for all gamers, and the quality settings weren't low. I never set quality settings on gaming to low, because it just really does spoil the whole idea of having a graphics card and playing games.